So Manchester United ended a largely promising summer window with the departure of several high-profile players. That came alongside the arrival of one of European football's brightest goalkeeping talents. Despite a heavy focus on attack, many remain concerned about a lack of midfield priority. But what then about the future of Carlos Baleba? We're touching on every little detail and plenty of your questions in the latest episode of The Theatre of Red. Now that we have all had a bit of time to breathe following a rather busy deadline day in the Northwest, Ruben Amorim is coming to terms with a new-look dressing room consisting of 5 new faces. This, of course, is going to coincide with news of the mighty Grimsby Town fielding an ineligible player in their Carabao Cup victory against the Reds, despite a nervous couple of hours in Blundell Park. Manchester United officials have opted to ignore any pursuit towards replacing the League Two outfit in the competition, despite the rather unnecessary public shaming of our Portuguese leader. Now, in fairness, I think the embarrassment that could have come from actually proceeding ahead with this, it probably would have pipped what we already endured in the Cup. So I, for one, am glad that United decided to take it no further. Also, actually, before I get into the meat and gravy of today's episode, what about Erik ten Hag and his coaching staff lasting a little over 4 months at Bayer Leverkusen? While it may seem like a rash decision to part company so soon, can we acknowledge the lottery that the man has inherited? If you are unaware of what I'm speaking about, ten Hag and his staff have collected 28.1 million euros in compensation fees in 10 months. And that is, of course, since being relieved of his duties in Manchester and now Germany. Oh, to be a football manager, eh? So let us begin to unwrap a rather busy summer period for an Ineos-led Manchester United, with no less than 5 first-team acquisitions bolstering Amorim's squad, with attack receiving a notable injection, while a cold sweat runs down the back of Andre Onana and Altay Bayindir following the arrival of Mr. Sana Lamens. Now, the 23-year-old obviously arrived on deadline day for a fee of only £18.2 million, with a further 3 and a bit in add-ons. He's going to wear the number 31 shirt and has signed a 5-year deal with ample anticipation amongst the fan base of seeing Belgium's future number 1 in action. For those of you tuning in to the Theatre of Red for the first time, you are most welcome to the family and thank you. But this is a deal that we have covered for many months, despite his tender age and reasonable lack of experience as a regular starter, having just completed his first full season as the main man. United have recognised his talent early, his ability and his potential for growth. And this all came around since last year. That is something that we've stated on the pod for quite some time. Now, when you consider the signing, to me, it has the hallmarks of another building block towards Project 150, with these aspirations of cultivating a talented squad from back to front and fine-tuning that balance in the dressing room. Statistically, you will have to work very hard to find a better option between the sticks with metrics that can rival the best across Europe. Make no mistake about that. We know that United have struggled with set pieces and rangy deliveries into a congested area, with both Onana and Bayindir already succumbing to multiple forgettable moments leading to goals at the start of this season. I know there are many people who scoff at the idea of utilising figures and metrics to make a point in football. But if you focus solely on a command of the area, which directly relates to one of United's most telling deficiencies, Lamens stopped on average 1.52 crosses per 90 minutes into his area last season, with a total contribution towards delivery stopped at a staggering 11.2%. Now, that is absolutely huge. And to put that particular aspect into perspective, Onana managed a total of 5.5% in the same period, so less than half. He has largely overperformed the expected number of goals denied, and he held a save percentage of 81.3% last season. I cannot tell you just how impressive that is, especially when you consider Onana had 68.9 and City's new man Gianluigi Donnarumma was further back again with 66.7%, and that was in France. Naturally, there was much talk about the prospect of Emi Martinez making a late move, with his desire to join United largely publicised by the likes of Fabrizio Romano throughout the final hours of the window. Now, not denying his experience and what he could have brought to the dressing room. Say what you will about the man, he is a World Cup winner. You can't escape that. But I feel that Lamens was the correct option when factoring age, potential, transfer, and the inevitable topic of wages. And that's when you consider that Martinez eclipses the salary of Onana. Now, I know some will question the level of opposition and the calibre of talent in the Belgian Pro League. I have always felt that the goalkeeping conversation deserves a slightly different perspective than outfield. Now, before I go, I'm not denying that more talented attackers ply their trade in England, but despite the many variations of tactics and styles, Lamens retains the same size of goals that he needs to tend. Nothing gets bigger for him when he comes to England. And while he will come against better attackers, you must remember he's going to inherit Lenny Yoro, Lisandro Martinez and Matthias de Ligt. That's just three of them, and they're going to be standing in front of him. Yes, the position at Old Trafford is amongst the most scrutinised in world football, and people can point towards the player's age also as an additional worry, and I understand that. But in response to that, look at Onana and his profile when he arrived. I mean, he was off the back of a starring performance in the Champions League final with a reputation befitting the task. Need I say any more about that? What I will say is my time working in European football has been spent across a multitude of leagues, absolutely loads. And admittedly, I have not spent a colossal amount of time monitoring Belgium, but I did retain some time many months ago. It was actually around this time last year when Kevin Denke was a name being thrown around in the Northwest. As a result, I interacted with the likes of Louis Dupoint, and I have a long-time colleague who's based in Ireland who actually splits his time between commentating on athletics coverage and also weekly commentating for the Belgian top-tier outings. Every single individual that I have spoken to in and around the Belgian league suggests that United have brought in a shrewd operator who has an aged head on young shoulders. His temperament differs extraordinarily between playing and his time away from the field. And his confidence is not classed as arrogance. Instead, he has a genuine belief in his ability, and he's very eager to test himself in England. Naturally, it would be a huge call to go ahead and throw him in against City in 2 weeks' time, or less than 2 weeks. And I would be very surprised if we see that, as much as I would love to see what would actually unfold. As we reported months ago, the aim has always been to recruit a young talent to push the number one for playing time, and either taking the spot or improving what we already have. The issue is it is rather difficult to call a number one right now between Onana and Bayindir, given their performances, their selections, and their playing time. But all things considered, right now I couldn't be happier that we moved for Lamens. And he is a goalkeeper that I believe can excel at the highest level for Manchester United and Belgium. And despite the expected social agenda that has already developed, I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, United have got a very credible talent on their hands.
First of all, this move is my dream move, and also today is the last day, so everything comes together like this. So it's a massive day for me, and I'm very happy that we could get it done today. I think I'm quite all round. I take pride in that at everything I'm quite good. Of course, you have working points that you can improve at everything. I like to play from the back also with the team with my feet. I like to help the team with controlling the space behind the defense, helping my defenders. And of course, if you want to be a top goalkeeper at this level, you have to be a good shot stopper. So I think, like I just said, I think all round quite good. I can improve also, and I'm already eager to start training and improving so that I can take the next step.
Of course, what would a deadline be without endless speculation and social charlatans generating endless talking points? And United were obviously linked with several players in the final hours of deadline day. Keith Dalgan from Stockport wrote to us at editor@theatre-of-red.com after the final hours of Monday's perennial drama, and he asked a specific question regarding just how close United came to signing Conor Gallagher. He said, "Hey Shaun, we saw a few individuals posting about Gallagher returning to England, with United seemingly entertaining the prospect of a deal and coming quite close. Was it ever actually a possibility?" This is one that came very swiftly and was viewed as a potential option to bolster Amram's arsenal throughout the remainder of the season. Gallagher, as we know, is playing in La Liga with Atletico Madrid after his summer move 12 months ago. Now, as I tweeted on deadline day, this was never as close as some people suggested, with a couple of individuals claiming that the club and the player had discussed terms. United, like Crystal Palace, contacted Atleti about the prospect of taking the player on loan. Now, at 25, he's a good age, really good age, and he offers a notable engine, particularly as a box-to-box midfielder. But Atletico had zero interest in any loan deals at all for the player. Now, I spoke with Spanish sources on the day, one of whom works with the club daily, and I was advised that the only way that the Spanish side would consider a deal on a permanent deal for a fee beginning at 40 million euros. The main point to take from all of this was neither the player or the club were pushing for any sort of a move, and nothing would have turned concrete unless a potential suitor dropped the desired amount on the table and then pursued into talks with the player's representatives thereafter. United made a brief inquiry about a loan. It was shut down relatively quickly from what I'm told, and that was that, Keith. But there was interest. It just never got anywhere near as far as what some suggested that it did or would have. Naturally, another name, and is arguably one of the most spoken about during the summer, was Carlos Baleba. It's now common knowledge that United pursued a deal with the aim of shocking European football following weeks of financial conversations surrounding PSR and the many redundancies that club staff endured. Baleba, as we can see from recent performances, has maybe not enjoyed himself as much as previously in the aftermath. And it is fair to say that his head was a little more than turned by United. You can just see that in his performances for Brighton. To clarify, it is obviously no secret that United wanted and still want the player, and the player wants to make the move to Old Trafford. However, the point that I'm advised on is the continued desire to pursue stable relationships, and that's towards the possibility of a move in January or next summer. I was told many weeks ago by close sources, as I stated on social media, that United officials had more or less accepted that a deal was unlikely this summer due to Brighton's inability to recruit his replacement on such short notice. That was accurate then, and it is just as accurate now. But the notion of building solid relationships with club and player for a future move are far more correct than people wanted to accept when I suggested such at the time. I believe an awful lot of the negativity and the responses surrounding it, sort of like it's now or never, that they were largely down to frustration about a lack of activity in midfield. And I think people were simply venting at the time. But I can confirm today that the club still retains an interest in pursuing the player. And despite what some believe, there has been significant groundwork completed towards a future deal. As we know, football changes constantly, and the introduction of another club can alter the dynamic. But United intend on maintaining a close relationship with the player and Brighton towards a future deal. That I have been advised on very reliable grounds. Obviously, much of this now comes in as well when you look at Kobbie Mainoo and the fact that he's made it so clear about desiring additional playing time. The gauntlet has been set. The challenge is there for him to put in the time, the effort, and the required discipline that's required to earn a starting berth in this team. So he's going to gain ample minutes in Ruben Amorim's first team. And then it's about him grasping that and really and truly putting forward his shout and his claim for a future stake at the heart of this midfield. When you consider Baleba, this stems back to an acceptance from this Ineos hierarchy that their planned assault on squad solutions aiming towards Project 150 would not be completed in one window. And furthermore, as I have harped on about for months now, you'll all know this, Liam Delap's decision to join Chelsea altered the entire summer dynamic, albeit that would appear to have been for the better, considering who has since come in and the path that has been taken on both sides since then. Like so much beforehand, your decision to take my word on these matters is entirely up to you. But I'd like to think that just with a few examples, that our exclusive coverage on Rashford, including Spanish television appearances on the matter, or being the first to confirm interest in Hugo Ekitike months ago, alongside the sole voice going against the regular names in the transfer market about United's continued pursuit of Sen Lamens, that should stand by what I am saying today. There's been multiple examples throughout the summer, and what I'm saying is not fabricated. The proof is in the pudding, and it's all there on Twitter. It's all on the Theatre of Red website. We've been confirming these deals for months. And when you look at it, it's a rather frustrating dynamic because there are so many people who profit from other individuals' work on social media every single day. But thankfully, there is a large contingent, including you, who can see past this nonsense. And I would like to thank each and every one of you for your continued support throughout the summer and today as you are listening. But that, of course, leads me towards the inevitable conversation regarding outgoings and a question from Mr. Mark Short. He got in touch and he says, I'm not sure if you've listened to the latest episode of Talk of the Devils yet, but Carl was asked his feelings following the summer window as a whole. I'd love to get your take on this and keep up the great work. Well, firstly, thank you, sir. And no, I have not had an opportunity to listen to the lads yet. As you can imagine, it's been rather busy over the last 48 hours, but I certainly will be listening to them later this evening or tomorrow morning. I think when you factor in the entire summer, it is difficult to look at it and not be just a little bit enthusiastic. Naturally, there is apprehension, as there should always be. These are signings who may or may not be the solution to the great question at Old Trafford. You must think back to previous windows and ask yourself, how many times has every new player that's come to the club hit the ground and been a success right from the off? It's incredibly rare. And inevitably, a lack of a midfield purchase has left so many people annoyed and ultimately worried about the prospects of a successful season. That said, when we can hold such reservations about throwing a young player in Lamens into the Old Trafford cauldron, surely you can apply the same about the likes of a 21-year-old in Carlos Baleba. I mean, obviously he's an amazing talent, but there's absolutely no guarantee that he hits the ground running and transforms this team immediately. As we know as a whole now, having analysed everything that's been and gone, Premier League spending came close to 3.1 billion this summer. That eclipsed the combined total spent in Spain, Italy, Germany and France. Within that, Manchester United spent £216 million and clawed back 68 million with the various outgoings. Now, from a financial perspective, while we should have received more for certain players, this is once more the byproduct of 2 decades of Glazer mismanagement and this ridiculous hierarchy that ran the club into the ground and what we're trying to eradicate today. You know the names I'm speaking about and the horrific decisions that were made. But when you focus on this summer solely with Matheus Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo, we have 2 extremely good Premier League proven attackers, both looking exceptionally good in the early stages of their Manchester careers. There's a case to be made even, I believe, when you look at it as a whole, that both have the capacity to grow into a top 5 or top 10 player in Europe in their positions realistically. And contrary to the opinions of some, that is an absolute upgrade on what we had and what we were using last season. You look ahead of them then, and in Benjamin Sesko, we've acquired a very talented prospect who can grow into a phenomenal line leader for this team. However, as I have well documented previously, this is going to take time and patience. And that is why we're seeing a very impressive Mason Mount making up the attacking trio with Cunha and Mbumo. But make no mistake, Sesko's acquisition is a mighty show of intent from Manchester United. I've already discussed Lamens in detail. And then you look at Diego Leon. Well, he's young. He offers promise in two areas. For one, obviously the football club has acquired a talented youngster who can grow into a brilliant option for Manchester United Football Club. But then on the other hand, and this is the thing that really excites me, it shows a reintroduction into the South American market. And that has been badly neglected. It's been missing for so many years. When you think back on it, I'd rather not name names because it's just too upsetting, but United have missed out on so many South American players due to this bizarre unwillingness to back scouting reports and to trust talent over these ridiculous tried and tested, far too expensive names that we have been struggling to offload since. But the 5 players that I have just mentioned, they obviously replace 5 that we are well used to in Alejandro Garnacho, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Anthony and Rasmus Højlund. First and foremost, I think it's important that we have to acknowledge that after much scrutiny, the club did manage to offload 4 of the 5 exiled individuals. And it would have been 5, but for Tyrell Malacia's move breaking down at the last minute, which was incredibly unfortunate. Ruben Amorim has continuously referenced a need to reshape the culture at Manchester United. And we know far too well about the toxicity that has destroyed so much of the feel-good factor in the club in the last few years. That has come from the top and it's festered down. But when you consider Garnacho and his move to Chelsea, I think it's largely a shame that we couldn't generate more by way of a fee. But the club did stand firm and they managed to get more than Todd Boehly and co wanted to spend. I think when you look back at it and you try to ask yourself the question, am I disappointed that Alejandro Garnacho has left and gone to London? No, I am not. I think it's a shame that he couldn't keep himself grounded and give us what so many believed that he would. But it all stems back to one important line, that no player is bigger than Manchester United, especially a largely predictable 21-year-old that contributed massively towards the club's underperformance with XG last season. And that's not even mentioning the issues that we incurred with relatives and the unnecessary social content that was produced thereafter. I am ultimately happy that he's moved on. And I'm eager to see, as a football supporter, just how he responds to the challenge of gaining regular football at a side that continues to buy players when he has committed to 7 years. I think that one's going to be fascinating. You move to Anthony. Yes, we have made a massive financial loss, but this was a deal that needed to happen. And the fact that we have offloaded his salary while recouping a fraction of the overpayment shelled out is at least something that can be balanced when considering PSR. Naturally, we hope that Rashford excels in Spain and makes a permanent move to generate further cash towards squad advancement. And although I am rather disappointed about how it has ended up for Rasmus Højlund, we do stand to recoup a large amount of what was paid for the player in the first place. It's actually the most of any of these deals. Now, I won't go on about this because any of you regular listeners are well aware of my stance on the player, but I do have a sneaking feeling that this is one we will regret. I wish him the very best with his move to Napoli, and obviously I'm very interested to see how he's going to link up with Scott McTominay once more. And then last but not least, there is the Jadon Sancho dynamic and his move to Aston Villa on a season-long loan. Now, in all my time following football and reporting on football, very few have I encountered a player like Sancho, who appears to have such unwillingness to prioritise his career when he's at an age where that should be his sole priority. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't help but feel, having watched his performances for United and Chelsea, that England is just too fast-paced for him, too physical, and completely unsuited to the time that he was accustomed to in Germany and playing on the continent. But there is an interesting dynamic about his contractual status. And Steve Sanders wrote in looking for clarity about United's ability to extend the deal. Now, it is true, the club has the option to extend his stay by another year. And despite the carnage that he has caused, the only logical point in doing so is by monitoring his time in Birmingham and attempting to reclaim some form of transfer fee instead of losing him for free next summer. However, given the salary that he's on, and what we have seen since he arrived back in Manchester, I think it would be an extensive risk. And I personally just want any association with him removed, to be perfectly honest. I think it would be very surprising if the club went down that road, especially when he turned on the opportunity to play with Roma and provide United in the region of 20 million this summer. However, when finalising Mark's initial question about my feelings regarding the summer window as a whole, I am quite pleased, more so than pleased. It's difficult to say that everything is going to work out so early after their moves, but I think it's been a hugely positive start for the duo who you'd expect to make an immediate impact out of the five in Cunha and Mbeumo. And despite the losses to Arsenal and Grimsby, United are either leading or close to leading in an array of metrics across the Premier League towards everything from chances created to shots and time spent in the opposition penalty box. Now, I can't help but feel that if this continues, the goals will inevitably flow. And just how wonderful would it be if that began against City and Chelsea after the international break? So, yeah, I'm delighted that we brought in Lamens, and I'm equally delighted with Cunha and Mbeumo. Sesko is a real good signing as a player who can potentially lead the line for a decade, and Leon signifies a renewed hope in the South American market. Furthermore, we've offloaded significant salaries. We've removed a negative culture in the dressing room and provided Amram with the opportunity to continue building a positive ethos in Carrington. And I'm looking forward to the derby in a little under 2 weeks, because ultimately speaking, considering all the problems that we've had, 4 out of 5 ain't bad. And on that, I shall say goodbye to you all for another week ahead of a round of international fixtures, and just hope that we don't incur any injuries during that time. I will be back next week with somebody joining me to have a chat and cover whatever rears its head between here and then. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening. Get in touch across our socials at theatre_of_red. We are only too happy to chat with you all. So on that, enjoy the internationals if that's your thing. And I look forward to touching base with you all very soon. Much love.